Good morning.
Good morning, Father.
So a few weeks ago, Father Jack was here visiting before he deployed on the aircraft carrier, and he flew back from here to California, and then just a few days later, he had to fly to Japan, and then he had to get on the flying death trap that is the Osprey to fly out to the aircraft carrier, and he's been out there now for a few weeks off the coast of South Korea. And would you know, aircraft carriers actually do have Wi-Fi. So he sent me this video of his room or cabin, or you don't call it a stateroom on a naval ship, do you? What do you call it? No, it's not a stateroom, is it? Quarters? It's like a cell. Anyway, he shares it with the ship's surgeon, which isn't actually a surgeon. I thought like he'd have scalpels and stuff, but not really a surgeon. Anyway, he sent me this video of the quarters cell thing. And I was like, where's the balcony? where are the portholes? You know, where's the virtual balcony? Where's the phone where you can call for room service? And none of that. Just this like horrible Spartan metal room with these giant purple pipes that go through that carry jet fuel throughout the thing. So he's like, oh yeah, when we get back to San Diego, you can come and visit and you can see the ship. And I was like, I don't really think I want to do that. I'll meet you in Miami, and we'll get on the Oasis of the Seas and go out on the ocean the way it's supposed to be done. Then he sent me this video of the F-18s taking off, and that was really cool. I asked him if he had, Top Gun soundtrack playing while that was happening. He said, no, they're not allowed to do that. So it's kind of uninspiring. But anyway, I said, well, you know what? It's good for you to be out there on this boat in the middle of the ocean with like nothing for Lent, because Lent is this kind of desert time for us, and so there you are out just floating around in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Enjoy it. Jesus in the gospel today is led into the desert after his baptism, before his public ministry. He's led out into the desert where he is tempted by the devil. Now, it seems a little weird to think God is tempted, right? But of course, Jesus is true God and true man. And so we see in his human nature this temptation that is taking place. And I think that's an important thing for us to recognize, that temptation is not something that is in and of itself evil, right? Temptation is not in and of itself sin. But rather, temptation is an invitation to us to either choose to sin, to choose to reject God, or more importantly, temptation is an invitation to holiness. It's to choose to do the will of God. And so in Jesus' temptation here in the desert, he has these three temptations where the devil tempts him to turn the rock into bread. He tempts him with the power of having all the power of the kingdoms of all the earth. And then he tempts him to kind of show the power of God. Now, all of these seem a little odd because, right, he's Jesus. He doesn't need to worry about food. He doesn't need to worry about having power of the kingdoms of all the earth because he's the king of the universe. Why would he test himself? He's God. But again, in Jesus' human nature, we see how these temptations apply in our own lives. So these temptations, I think we can recognize how we ourselves are tempted to sin. So this first one, this idea of turning a rock into food, turning a rock into bread, right? The devil says, take this rock, take this thing that's useless to you right now, and make it something good for your body. Make it something that is pleasurable. Make it something that will nourish you. So the first temptation is one of pleasure. The first temptation is one of bodily need. The first temptation is one in which the devil is saying, oh, but if only you could have this, you'd feel better. And so we recognize in our own lives those temptations where we desire to just, eat all the bread that we can find with the bottomless bread basket at the restaurant, or the Red Lobster biscuits. Those things are so good. I don't remember the last time I ate at Red Lobster. I remember growing up thinking that was fancy dinner, but I'd only really eat the rolls. But just this idea of sating every desire that I have. Of course, we know that we can't do that. We know that we ought not do that. We know that will probably lead us to harm. If you eat all the cheesy cheddar biscuits, you're probably going to not feel so good. And so the rejection of this temptation that we recognize here in this time of Lent through the spiritual practices of the church, we fast, right? So in fasting, we give something up. In fasting, we say, you know what? Even though I have the opportunity to eat those delicious, cheesy biscuit roll things whenever I want, I'm going to say for 40 days, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to eat the cheesy biscuits. I'm not going to eat the chocolate. I'm not going to watch the Netflix. I'm not going to watch the YouTube. I'm going to abstain. And yes, there's the temptation to say, oh, but I really want to watch, this show that's coming on Netflix. Or, oh, I really want to see what happened this week on, this channel that I like on YouTube. I really want to be kept up with what's going on. There's nothing wrong necessarily with that. But yet, in our practice of denying ourselves, when one of those temptations that leads us away from God, when one of those temptations that leads us into sin, when one of those temptations presents itself, we look and we have the practice where we say, no, I can deny myself something good, so let me also deny myself something that will cause me harm. And so as Jesus is tempted for this bodily pleasure, this bodily consumption, so too we recognize in our own lives through those temptations that we are called to deny ourselves, and this time of Lent is an opportunity for us to do that. The second temptation, the devil takes Jesus and shows him all the kingdoms of the world, and he says, all this can be yours if you just bow down and worship me. And again, we hear that, and it's like, well, Jesus isn't going to bow down and worship the devil. And what does Jesus want all the kingdoms of the world for? He's the king of the universe. But for us, right, the promises and the allurements of the world, the devil says, oh, but you could have this if only you sell me your soul. Now, it's not always so objective. We talk about selling one's soul to the devil, and you think of this like bill of sale that's written out in this deed, and here you go, But in reality, just simply the allurements of the world, the enticements of the world, we look and we say maybe there's something more important than God. Maybe there's something that I put as a higher priority than God in my life. Again, whether that is pleasure, whether that is power, whether that is a desire for worldly comfort, whether it's a desire for control. And we look around and we say, yeah, but I could have this thing, and it's going to make my family happy. It's going to make me more comfortable. When we think about power, last night before Mass, I asked a couple where their grandkids were that are normally with them, and they're like, oh, grandson's got baseball today. I was like, isn't he only 5 years old? Yeah, he's 5, but he's playing baseball. So I guess you got to start early if you're going to play baseball, and spend $9,000 a year on baseball for the next 20 years of your kid's life. I said, so is it like T-ball? No, it's not T-ball. It's coach pitch. He's like, really? I don't remember coach pitch when I was 5. I don't think I played baseball when I was 5. Probably waited until I was 6 or 7. It was T-ball. And even then, I still couldn't hit the ball off the tee. Don't laugh. I've got real childhood trauma from my peers laughing at me when I whiffed the ball off Timmy can't even hit the ball off the tee. Yeah, mean people. To be honest, I was still hitting off the tee when I was 12, probably. So, but this idea that we have to invest in making sure that our kids can be the best at at the sport ball, to make sure that our kids can be the best at dance, to make sure that our kids can be the best in school, make sure that our kids take all the AP classes, and then that they're dual enrolled, so that when they graduate high school and they go to college, they're already juniors. You guys remember doing that when you were in high school? Not you guys that are actually in high school. I'm talking to your parents. I didn't take a single AP class in high school. Maybe, I don't know. I'll let you deduce whatever you want to deduce from that. But it just seems that there's such pressure on us all, or even beyond adolescence, right? Into adulthood. Oh, I've got to perform and achieve at my work. I've got to show my value. I've got to make sure that I can continue to get that next promotion. Because again, to have more power, to have more worldly power, to have more worldly good, if I can only focus on that, then I'll be happy. Will I focus on my prayer? Will I focus on my relationship with Christ? Will I focus on my desire to avoid sin? Will I focus on my desire to do good, to do the will of God? Will I just focus on the next thing? And so that temptation of the devil to Jesus to say, if only you worship me, you can have everything. And then you'll be happy, right? It's very easy for us to fall into that temptation without even realizing it. And then finally, this temptation where the devil takes Jesus up on the temple and he says, throw yourself down. Doesn't promise him anything in this one, right? He doesn't say, like, you'll have food, right? You'll have something that gives you pleasure. He doesn't say you'll have power. He just says, throw yourself down. See what happens. And Jesus says, no, you can't test the Lord your God, right? But oftentimes it feels like we want to do that. We want to just push a little bit more, right? Like we're little kids. How much more can I get away with? God, you're good, but I'm going to see how good you are. Oh God, you're so loving, you wouldn't possibly allow anything bad to happen to me. Oh God, you're so loving, you wouldn't possibly allow condemnation. Now, the devil is real, right? Here in this gospel passage, the devil himself is the one who's tempting Jesus. There's two dangerous temptations. One is to think too much of the devil. One is to focus on the devil so much so that we lose sight of Christ, that we just think, like, the devil's trying to trap me. The devil is out to get me. Well, yeah, he is, but God's already beat him, so it's okay. Doesn't mean forget about the devil, because that's the other danger, is to say, oh, well, God's good, God's merciful, so who cares about the devil, devil schmevel. But no, we do have to acknowledge, no, the devil is real. The devil does prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. We do have to strive to avoid temptation, strive to not fall into temptation. We can't just simply say, oh, well, it's no big deal because God is good. God would never condemn anybody. Rather, we have to find that middle ground where we say, no, the devil is real. The devil is tempting me, but yet God is more powerful. God is in control. And so through these 40 days of Lent, we recognize through the practices of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, I mentioned prayer as, I mentioned fasting as something to combat those earthly desires. Almsgiving is something that helps us to combat that desire for power, that desire for control. And then prayer is something that helps us to combat that desire to control God, that desire to be God, that desire to make God in our own image and likeness. Prayer for humility. Prayer to be able to do the will of God. Prayer to trust in God. Prayer to say, God, it seems that you're asking me to do something that I don't want to do. But I'm going to trust you. I'm going to follow you. I'm going to do it anyway. Prayer that helps us to really enter into union with Christ. Prayer that helps us to make ourselves one with Christ. This time of Lent is an opportunity for us all to grow in holiness. This time of Lent is an opportunity for us to deny ourselves the things of this world, to trust completely in God, to let go of those desires that we have for power, for control, for pleasure, for prestige, to let go of those things and to completely and fully trust in God's providence and his will. And so as we enter into this time of Lent, let us ask the Lord that he may continue to show us his will, and that in trusting in him through prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, we may be able to follow him always and do his will all the days of our life.